Time for the August garden tour. I'm going to skip the grow station this time because there's not a lot going on in there. I just transitioned a lot of the seedlings out to the shelf out here. And so I can show you a lot of the cacao are starting to do better. They're leafing out again after getting it a little sun-baked. You can see a lot of these leaves have dried out, but they're leafing out again and still getting taller. And I've taken a look at the roots, and they are looking pretty healthy. Here's a lot of the seedlings that have transitioned out here. We got the mulberry, we got the grapefruit. I just brought out the cranberry. We'll see how long it takes these to get bigger. We got some of these apples. This one looks like it died, unfortunately. The lychee are still doing well. And I recently had the jackfruit all come up. And some of them are gonna outgrow this little shelf very quickly. So I'll have to move them. And then right next to it, the cilantro is all coming up. So we got a whole little space for the cilantro. We're going to get a big old bush. We'll finally be able to pull it and cook with it for everything. That'll be awesome. So I mentioned this breadfruit that didn't make it, unfortunately. I did a scratch test on it yesterday, and it is still green in here. So if it is surviving, then there's some small chance that it will sprout again. But I spoke with the seller, and he was happy to send me out another plant, and here it is. This one made it through the mail from Puerto Rico, and it has been rooting just fine. I've had it for a few weeks now, maybe almost a month, I think. And it's doing well. You can see more leaves coming out from the top. And breadfruit and jackfruit are distant cousins. They're in the Artocarpus family, I believe. So they have, if you've seen a jackfruit, then a breadfruit is kind of like a smaller ball-shaped version of a jackfruit. But anyway, so a lot of things that I have going on since last month are like lots of efficiency improvements and just kind of a lot of learning and iterating on my part. So I've improved kind of the state of affairs for my strawberry patch here. I moved them away from there because it turns out they were getting too much sun, and I wasn't able to keep up with the watering that was required in that spot. So over here, I've been able to keep up with it much better, and they've been bouncing back. When I moved them over here, I individually addressed each pot, and this took like half a day because I had to take some breaks. But they've all been improved soil-wise, and they're all kind of leafing out and bearing fruit, starting to bear fruit again. And since they're more healthy, they are getting less attacks from insects. Previously, it was getting like super chewed up. Right over here, my growing mint hedge. It's not there yet, but it'll get there. They're acclimating to this spot and starting to grow into these pots. I chopped back a lot of the tall ones so that they'll send their energy down into the roots and grow up new shoots. Some of them are starting to do that. Like I think this one, as you can see, this is a new shoot that was sent out. And I think the banana mint was one that before I potted all of these into the grow bags, there was nothing left above the soil. I dug down and there was like a little bit of rhizome and root left, and since I got it in its new home, it just came back gangbusters. Right up here, I repotted all the passion fruit, and these are all seedlings, of course. They'll get bigger when over time. Same thing for the cherry moya. I finally got around to repotting them, and I'll have, gosh, I don't know how many there is here, like 30 or so, maybe 40 seedlings that I'll figure out something to do with when they get bigger. Behind me, the asparagus is doing just fine. It's ferning, and the coffee is looking really healthy. Look at these shiny leaves. They're beautiful. Starting to branch out. The blueberry it has not been doing hot, I will admit. I brought it over here for similar reasons to the strawberries. This is kind of a case of I'm going to have to try a few different things to figure out what's going on with it. I think it's definitely going to be a combination of issues, but it is showing some signs of bouncing back from its various problems. I did get some fruit from this year, but it's been put through so much stress and strain, as you can tell, that I doubt we'll see any more fruiting for some months. But we'll see. This is my first blueberry plant. Next to it, some of the pineapples have rooted, but some of them didn't make it. Like, I think these two just rotted, but these ones look like they made it. And then over here, I believe all of these pineapples have made it. Some of them are like really obvious. Like this one looks pretty healthy. I don't know, pretty healthy. It is definitely alive compared to the ones that rotted. Like the drying out tips is just kind of what you would expect from trying to root a pineapple, I guess. Yeah, like this one. Stuff like that. That's what I would look for as obvious signs of not making it. So I'll keep an eye on that one, we'll see. But anyway, I mentioned iterating on a lot of things and learning a lot of things. I think I may have mentioned it in a previous garden tour. So basically, I figured out that I applied too much compost to my raised beds and didn't mix it well through enough with the soil. And as a result, the compost is somewhat hydrophobic, and so the top layer of my raised beds would dry out very easily. And unless I came along and watered very deeply and more often, then my raised beds would dry out. And so as a result of that, a lot of my seedlings that I planted out recently haven't made it, because the top layer of the soil dried out too quickly, and also because it was just too much compost in some areas. Like they couldn't grow in that. So all those combinations of factors made it so some of my seedlings haven't made it. But I'm going to be doing some new sowings soon, and we'll just take it as learning and go forward from here. But some of my seedlings are still here. They're starting to grow. I got some carrots in here. I got some broccoli going. I still have this Swiss chard plant that's I cut back and is now starting to sprawl wild. Did a resowing of these potatoes here. I have a couple plants that are huge and starting to flower, and I'm just letting them do their thing. Right next to them, I just set this bed up for my sweet potatoes. I sprouted one sweet potato in a tray of soil and got one sweet potato slip from it, and then planted that singular slip in a pot, and it is now maybe 3-4 times longer. It grew into a big shoot, and I knew I wanted a raised bed for sweet potatoes exclusively because they kind of take over the space that they're put in. And so I was looking at what other people are doing, and then I got this bin from my mom, and an idea came to me that I could just turn this into another raised bed. So that's what I did. I put a bunch of holes in this, and I prepared this as a sweet potato raised bed. So the leaves haven't flipped over because I literally just put this, transplanted this like a half an hour ago. So the setup I have is I've got these tomato cages here, and it's gonna be able to climb these and get more sun. So I am looking forward to having a good crop of sweet potatoes in the coming months. Right over here, the banana is looking really awesome. It's one of my favorite things out here because of these beautiful leaves. And whenever it sends up a new shoot of leaves, it's always really neat to see them open up. I finally pruned the donut peach because it leafed out at all the places that it was able to, and it was really obvious that certain branches were dead and not going to leaf out, and it had like 3 or 4 big main branches, and some of them were dead, so I finally pruned it, and it looks like a much healthier shape now. Jumping around a little bit, the Greek columnar basil is starting to flower, and this guy will burst into all sorts of flowers all over it, and then it'll just be a haven for pollinators. I'm looking forward to that. Down here in the herb bed, I've kind of just been revitalizing this bed as well, but this one has far less issues than some of the others, and I have been trying to keep it that way. I had some empty space in here, so I planted, these are called Seminole pumpkins. They are supposed to be a very tasty variety and very good for storage purposes. So I've got some here and then over here in this bed. This one I need to keep an eye on because it has been notorious for drying out. The dandelion's getting bigger. I finally got some echinacea going. I have it here and then in another spot that I'll show you that I set up yesterday. The French tarragon's coming back up. I just noticed that earlier today because this was dying off and I wasn't sure if it was going to come back. But I learned recently that French tarragon can take over a space, so I was kind of waiting for it to do that, and it might finally be thinking about taking over. I know some of these other herbs have really taken over. Like, this is a new planting of the parsley, but parsley is another one that can really take over. And in previous videos, I talked about how I removed this thyme and lemongrass and the Italian oregano from the herb bed because I wanted to get ahead of them taking over. They were getting very big and we just didn't need that much of them. So they got their own spots. But moving on, I'll take you over here. Let me show you the dragon fruit. Most of them have made it over the top of the trellises, and I just kind of secured a lot of them to the center yesterday because they were kind of flying all over the place. But now they'll start to kind of arc over, hopefully. Some of them are still growing straight up. You can see that behavior on these ones. I'm not sure when it's gonna decide to stop going straight up, but hopefully soon. Show you this. So this segment starts here and just goes all the way up to here. That's amazing. That's one whole segment of this dragon fruit. That's like a 3-4 foot segment. That's crazy. But that, I can show you some of my dragon fruit have been of great interest to the ants. They are very interested in the fresh tips of the dragon fruit on certain varieties here, and you can see some of the damage that they're doing. They're coming along and damaging them. I think it's like they like the fresh sugars or whatever it is in the tips. But I've been coming along and spraying them off with the hose, and I put out an ant trap, and it worked very short term, like a few days. I didn't see any on these dragon fruit that were being infected, but then they came back. So I'm gonna have to look at other ways to address this, because they are causing damage to some of these dragon fruit. And like, for instance, this segment may have continued growing if they didn't damage the tips. In this case, this segment stopped growing, and now it's growing a new segment at the top there. So it's not the end of the world, it's just annoying to see these dragon fruit getting damaged by the ants. So moving on, I have been having issues with my avocados, unfortunately. Both of them had completely defoliated. They had no leaves, but there were signs of them leafing out again, so I had hopes. And the Zutano avocado here has bounced back from whatever was going on. It's re-leafed again, but the Haas avocado has not done so. The white is a whitewash that I applied to help protect it from the sun. And if you were wondering, and I kind of got a little bit messy with it in some of these spaces here. It's like an organic, like plant-safe paint sort of thing. It's not actual house paint, though that has been used by some people, but I wouldn't recommend that, because when it flakes off, you're getting like paint in your soil, whereas this stuff is safe for the plant and safe for the soil. I had previously only applied the whitewash up to like the base, and then I was learning that if you apply it to the whole of the tree, it can help mitigate those effects of the sun. So at this point, I'm just trying to really baby these trees, not overly, but trying to address issues that they're having. I think it's definitely a combination of factors, but I did come out and check this soil, and it was overly dry. So it's possible that this one, or maybe both of them, were suffering from lack of water, and as it was getting warmer, they were using more. I'm just not sure at this moment, but I hope that the Haas makes it. I hope I haven't killed my tree, unfortunately. But, you know, it's not the end of the world. If it doesn't make it, I can get a new tree, and I'll have learned from these things. But the rest of my trees over here are all doing quite well. They all have new growth. We got some fruiting on the lemons and the limes. The other citrus are getting bigger. This was the blood orange, and then I think this is the grapefruit, the Buddha's hand, the kumquat's getting bigger. The mulberries have huge leaves, of course. They're getting taller. This pomegranate's getting big, and I'm knocking it over. I did plant a whole bunch of corn recently. Some of them are starting to get there. It's really just lots of young trees and seedlings still at this point. As I said, I kind of went overzealous with the compost, so I've addressed it in some areas and improved it, but I have learned some things, and I'm expecting I'll get some yield, but we'll really start to see better results probably later in the year and into next year as the compost begins to break down and mix better with the beds. I mentioned a couple spots for echinacea. I added these hanging pots because I want to do more vertical space in this small backyard. I know echinacea gets a bit bigger, but I didn't have a lot of good places to put it, so if it gets real big, I can move it. But what I've got going on in these places are pollinator flowers. I got chamomile in this one, some milkweed for butterflies in this one, and alyssum for just everybody in this one. And then behind me, I repotted my little fig, and I do not know the variety, unfortunately, but it has a friend now. This is another variety of fig that I got from a local nursery. This one is called Osborne, and the owner of the nursery told me that it has a similar taste to Black Mission, which we were able to try some pretty fresh ones the other day. But this variety is also a bit more tolerant of climate variables. Like if it's too hot, this one is less likely to wilt versus a Black Mission, and this one is also more shade tolerant. So this one seemed like a pretty good choice for me since I do like Black Mission. So, well, and you can see it's starting to grow some already. It's got a couple. So those will be ready in a couple months, I think. Oh, and I skipped over some of what's happening with the vining plants here. The passion fruit has, we haven't gotten any more fruiting happening yet, but it's been growing pretty vigorously. It's attached itself to the arch here in the shade cloth, and I've just been letting it do its thing. The kiwi right next to it is happily growing upwards on this stake, and I'm expecting it to get all the way to the top. We'll see. So that's mostly what's going on out here. It's kind of a mixed bag of results and learning things right now. I kind of, two steps forward, one step back sort of deal. But, that's okay. I'm learning a lot, and going forward will have much better results and better yields, and I'll be able to address issues better having learned some of these things. So yeah, I probably skipped over plenty of stuff, but that's the garden tour for August. I will see you next month, and I look forward to seeing the progress of all these things myself as well.